Go. We are live.
Welcome. Welcome all of you that are tuning in again for our 20th Town Hall. My name is Jametta Lilly, and I am blessed to serve as the CEO of the Detroit Parent Network. I am a proud grandma. I'm also a Detroiter, and I am one of those women from Michigan. I'm also proud to be a member of the COVID313 Community Coalition for Families and Youth. And as many of you know, every week we have been coming to you with facts, information, research, and love and support in this unprecedented time. And while I mentioned unprecedented time, love, and support, it brings forth what our topic is today. We're going to do a deeper dive today in education. What are the implications of what we are hearing back and forth between the legislators, between schools? We'll get to hear educational leaders talk about their plans for reopening and the kind of fluid positions they need to keep, because the science needs to drive us versus politics. And speaking of politics, the other important piece that we're going to get in today is voting. We all must vote. That is part of our democracy. It is part of the sweat, labor, and love, and tears, and blood that people have shed for us to have any semblance of freedom and to be able to move forward in this world. So please settle in, get settled, and we're so happy to have you join us for now, again, our 20th COVID Town Hall, focusing in on education and voting. Thank you for keeping connected to us. And to continue our connections, I'm so delighted to always have our co-moderator, Christine Bell. Christine, welcome.
Hi, Jametta. Thank you. As you all know, I have 3 wonderful children, and I am the executive director of Urban Neighborhood Initiative and a proud member of this coalition. We're translating the town hall to Spanish and Arabic as well as ASL. So we want to give folks time to get on the right line and get comfortable. Cindy, please share the phone number for Spanish translation.
Si necesita traducción en español, por favor hable al 313-626-7440, 313-626-7440. Hoy la traducción sería por la señora Gloria Rosas y Ofelia Martínez.
Thank you, Cindy. Saeed, please share the phone number for the Arabic translation.
إن كنت بحاجة للترجمة إلى اللغة العربية، رجاء الاتصال على الرقم 313-241-7030. الرقم مجددا هو 313-241-7030. معكم سعيد ونجوى دحدح. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saeed. Katie or Julie, could you please share the instructions for ASL? Thank you so much, Katie. And now to get us started, I'd like to welcome Cindy Gamboa to share our thoughts, our initial thoughts, and get us into the program. Cindy?
Thanks, Christine. And hi, everybody. Thanks for having me again. My name is Cindy Gamboa. I am a mother to 3 amazing children, and I'm the Organizing and Advocacy Director at Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation. Now, let's talk about schools. While there may be a lot of unknowns, there is some things that I definitely know for sure. The first is we need to enroll our kids into schools, and we need to protect our public schools. But we need to know that enrollment is going to look different based on what each of our family needs and our circumstances. So we know that our schools and communities are going to have to wrap our arms around each other, given our different needs as families. That means that those plans need to be rooted in the safety and well-being of all of our families. We want to have all the answers, but unfortunately, right now, we don't have them all. And I know that's hard as a parent. It's frustrating. I mean, I know I'm frustrated. I'm also trying to recognize that we're in a pandemic and no answer right now is gonna be a perfect one for everyone. We're gonna be here for you as you make your school decisions and make plans about reopening. And we're gonna be advocating collectively to ensure that the voices of parents and students are being heard in that planning. We encourage you to continue to ask questions of your school leaders. We also encourage you to look into your own networks. Talk to your family, your friends, your family support for a support on what your family may need in this time. We also know that it doesn't stop there. You have power, and we want you to use that power next week on the 4th. We need you to go out and vote. Our elected officials play a key role in funding schools. And right now, we need really good folks in office that are gonna move forward to fight for racial equity and the safety of our children in this moment. Today, we're gonna have charters, DPSCD, and community experts on voting that will give us information that we need to keep us informed. So please ask as many questions as you need in the chat. In the next 60 minutes, we're gonna share information with you. You can use our chat feature to type your questions in, or you can type your questions to 313-288-2082. Again, that's 313-288-2082. So we're gonna have a Q&A segment throughout the, sporadically in our segment so that we can make sure that your questions are answered. Any questions that aren't gonna be answered live, we are committed to making sure those are posted with answers on the website, onedetroitpbs.org. So for our experts, we do wanna remind you to please speak slowly for our translators. They wanna make sure that they are translating the important information that you are sharing correctly. So please speak slowly. We also ask you to turn off your camera when you are not speaking to ensure that our ASL interpreter can be seen, and mute yourself when you're not speaking. Terry Whitfield is our timekeeper today, and he's gonna ensure that we remain on time. So if you go over, we will give you a gently reminder to wrap it up. So we will take questions from the audience at the end of each segment. So that is it for me. I will turn it over to Jametta. Jametta?
Thank you, Cindy, as always. We're going to continue to move through our program. So we have our experts, and I'm really pleased to welcome to the program Brad Weaver. Brad is the Deputy Policy Director and Policy Advisor for the House Republican Office. And we welcome him to talk about various issues relevant to education that the legislature needs to take on. Next week, we'll have a representative from the Democratic side of the House to talk about policy perspectives as well. It's very important that we hear from all policymakers so that that knowledge can inform us as we move forward to keep our state and our children and families safe. Brad, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. I think this is wonderful. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Brad Weaver. I'm the Deputy Policy Director and Policy Advisor for the House Republican Caucus in Michigan. I'm also a parent. I have 3 boys, and I'm also a school board member. So I bring a lot of different perspectives to my profession and my personal life. So these are really important conversations that need to be had, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of what's happening in Lansing. And I will try to speak slowly. I'm sorry, I do speak fast. The first thing is to talk about the budget, and that's obviously been a big issue in Lansing right now. Revenues to the state are down significantly. Last week, the legislature signed or passed the budget agreement that was came to with the governor that in essence would increase funding about $175 per pupil for the current fiscal year. That's the year that we are currently in. There are some caveats to how those dollars can be spent, mainly for COVID-related response that many districts have had to face. So it was a difficult task to get to no reductions given the large budget hole that was part of the COVID response. For the next fiscal year, this is the fiscal year that would start October 1st. There hasn't been a whole lot of action, and there are discussions that are happening, but the main issue is that given the uncertainty that COVID has created, policymakers are a little unsure of what the revenue situation to the state actually is. And in August, there's going to be what we call in Lansing the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference. And that is an opportunity for the state's top economists to come together and make a good faith estimate of what revenues will look like to the state. From there, that is the start of the building of the budget for the next fiscal year. The budget needs to be in place by September 30th, so you will see some action sometime in September. It's hard to say when exactly that will be. A lot of that depends on the how much revenue is coming in and how much federal revenue might be coming in through the federal stimulus that's being discussed in Washington right now. So it's hard to provide districts a lot of certainty at this point, but I think the first step was making sure that the current fiscal year was covered. Let me move on a little bit. I want to talk about, you probably saw in the news, the legislature did also, the House did also act on a package of bills. It was really designed to provide districts with maximum flexibility in how they operate for the next school year. It was meant to open up the available courses for students to learn virtually. It provided relief to districts to not have to provide in-person instruction. It provided the opportunity for districts to assess students and see where they're at academically, which helps parents and teachers focus their instruction. Those are some of the highlights. And what I can say now is that has led to some really positive discussions with my colleagues in the Senate and my colleagues in the governor's office to really try to work towards an agreement of what things will look like next year. And I know there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Districts are trying their best to plan, and parents are trying to figure out what's happening and what they should do. I think it's important for parents to enroll their students and move forward with the best information that they have. I know it's a difficult time. I know we struggle in my family, but really the conversations are really focused on making sure that students are safe, that teachers are safe, that students' instructional needs are met, but also that we're providing some flexibility or some stability to districts. So that's really the focus of those conversations, and I would expect in the next week that we'll see something come out of Lansing to give some stability and some answers to districts. So
Brad, thank you very much. And I think there's a couple of things that you said that I can't help but resonate. And that is about the listening and recognizing that this is a moving target that we're looking at. And so we appreciate that there is some real seriousness around looking at the issues, et cetera. But what I'd like you to please stay on, because we are going to have a Q&A after the section, and would love to have some questions from our audience. Our audience, again, you can text us at 313-288-2082 or put your questions in the Facebook chat. We're going to move forward with our education segment and are very pleased to welcome back to the COVID-313 Town Hall, Ralph Bland. Ralph is the CEO of New Paradigm in Education. And Ralph, we welcome you to share what New Paradigm is doing and what you as an educational leader are looking at as we think about return to learning. Ralph, welcome.
Jametta,
Yes.
Ralph is running a bit late, so
Okay.
if we could maybe start in early childhood first, because we have Chandra on.
Wonderful. Yes, let's start with an early childhood perspective, because that's where learning begins, from in utero forward. Chandra Marshall, Dr. Marshall, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jametta. I am the Implementation and Policy Research Manager at Hope Starts Here. I am going to share some information. I know that you will hear insightful information from our school leaders surrounding reopening plans, but we also know that childcare providers and families are working hard during this time to respond to, prepare for, and meet our COVID-19 crisis head on. Although we are facing some challenges accurately reporting the changing and open and closed status of providers, Hope Starts Here is actively here to help. Hope Starts Here, along with the United Way of Southeastern Michigan, the city of Detroit, and more than a dozen other partners have come together to develop a website with multiple resources, which is www.detroitearlylearning.org. This was previously shared, but as a reminder, this houses resources, including the Build a Plan tool, which is designed to help your program meet state requirements and LAR guidance, follow best practices and recommendations to limit the spread of COVID-19. The Build a Plan tool can help providers make the decisions that are right for your staff, families, and are feasible within your specific program context. The Build a Plan tool purpose is to assist childcare providers reopen in accordance with the guidelines. I have some high-level data to report regarding the use of this tool. So there are 707 completed forms, of which 664 were completed in Michigan. 46 forms were completed within Detroit. So that's an additional 7 from the last report on June 30th. So we are excited to receive such a response. However, I urge providers in the city of Detroit to please utilize this tool and feel free to share this resource. Additionally, Hope Starts Here, along with the Parent Engagement and Outreach Coalition of partners, have come together to lift the voices of families and community to better understand the current needs and demands parents have regarding childcare, summer care, and fall programming. This 3-phase survey is in the second phase of survey collection, set to end tomorrow, July 31st, and redeploy August 14th. So this survey provides us critical insight around possible employment challenges due to COVID-19, changes in childcare, preferred childcare through the month, costs associated barriers to childcare, and perspectives regarding quality care factors and preferences. And so that's to really bring the voices of the childcare providers and families together as we are reopening. There have been 308 responses collected, with nearly 40% of respondents taking the time to complete our post-survey bonus questionnaire. So parents and families, please complete the family survey and earn the chance to have your name added in our cash prize raffle. And the links will be shared so that you all can utilize and access. So utilizing the resources I shared help us understand how to best support families and childcare providers as reopening happens. As a final comment, All of the resources that I made mention to will be shared so that you may access and share. Take advantage of the tools and resources offered to assist as we reopen. Please remember, Hope Starts Here is here to support all children, parents, family, early educators, and the Detroit community as we safely navigate this new era. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra, and thank you also for reminding everyone about the importance of our children from infancy straight up to the 4th grade is still considered early childhood. So we're going to move forward. Thank you again for that conversation. I just want to check with my my communications team. Has Ralph Bland or Sharlonda with us?
We do. We have Sharlonda and Chrystal from DPSCD on, so they're up next.
Really wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're going to continue to hear from the Detroit Public Schools Community District, who, as already been mentioning, has been doing that Herculean job of consistently trying to look at how to educate the number of children that they serve, over 50,000, and to do that in a manner that's safe, healthy, and assures that for their children as well as the staff and teachers. Welcome, Chrystal and Sharlonda. And Chrystal, would you like to start us off as the Director for Communications for the district?
Hi, good afternoon. How's everybody today?
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for that warm and snazzy greeting. Okay.
Yes, I would just like to say, as I introduce Sharlonda Buckman, our Assistant Superintendent of Family and Community Engagement, that I thank all of the families for sticking with us and just being here to support each other in the district as we make hard decisions and as we navigate into the unknown. We know that education for our students is paramount and really important, but most of all, providing options and meeting the needs of all the families is our top priority right now in making sure that everyone is safe. So I'm going to hand it off to Sharlonda so she can further explain what that looks like. And don't forget, visit DetroitK12.org for highlights and updates, and also our social media outlets, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at DetroitK12.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Chrystal. Sharlonda, welcome.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you now, and we can see you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having us and just being consistent with having the Detroit Public Schools Community District on every week for several weeks now throughout this pandemic. We appreciate that support. I know you guys wanted us to address a specific set of questions today, so I'm going to immediately go in on those questions, Jametta. So one, I want to lift up the regular conversations that we have been in with all of our stakeholders, with teachers, with parents, family members, unions, about our reopening plan, which we are continuing to move forward. We have expanded those community conversations, and I'll quickly share those that are coming up. We have one that is commencing on August 3rd from 10 to 12. We have another August 5th, the 7th, the 10th, the 11th. I would ask Chrystal to post those in the chat. And so we're very committed, as Chrystal said, to continuing to have an open dialogue with our families and other stakeholders to ensure that this community is very much aware of the reopening plan, our strategies as we move forward. And as this superintendent has intentionally done with every other issue that we've actually faced, continue to have a public conversation. One of the things that you asked is, what are we going to do if we return to a phase 3? And obviously for us on a couple of these questions, it really is about keeping our a pulse to the ground in terms of what guidance we're getting from the state, what the CDC is recommending. Right now, we're safe to move forward as we plan to accommodate families with multiple options in the fall. What are our biggest challenges is one of the things that you asked us to address. I think the biggest is really just ensuring that parents are free to choose the option that works best for their families. I think one of the challenges that we face as a school district is just a lack of trust. We have, even though we've built the last 3 years an intentional effort around transparency, we did it with the water. When we had that crisis, we had a very public conversation, and we saw that other school districts across the nation began to take our same approach, who had aging buildings around water. We did the same thing with the facility studies and understanding the investment that it's going to take to bring our buildings back to where they need to be. There has not been a challenge that we faced without communicating with all of our stakeholders, and it's no different in this pandemic. We've continued to be a part of this platform, and many others, myself, our superintendent, and others on cabinet have continued the conversations, and our principals in local buildings to make sure that we are not functioning in a silo. So I think that one of our challenges is at some point we got to break through the lack of trust or the distrust that continues to plague this district. I think another challenge is the local and national threat to actually strike. You know, that is undaunting in the sense that we cannot bail on our most vulnerable children. We can't bail on them. And the thought of teachers who are being paid with public dollars threatening to strike versus elevating the conversation. Let's continue to work together to problem solve. Let's not abandon our children during this time. And I will say that we have many teachers who are coming back, who are committed to coming back, who have come back. In fact, we see evidence of our plan working even in the summer school space where children are going to school safely. And we've had a lot of national media and others. The Washington Post came and looked at what we're doing. So there's evidence that we are putting into practice the safety measures that we've actually talked about and some of the best practices that we see and we hear about that are happening across the country. I also want to talk a little bit about what some of those safety measures are. I shared this last week when we had the conversation around what options will be for the fall. We know that for our K-8 schools, there will be a face-to-face option for those parents who choose that option. There will also be an online learning option, and we're continuing to talk with our families about what their options are for our high schools, for our large high schools. There will be AB schedules. So if your child goes to school, let's say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they will probably online learn Tuesday and Thursday and vice versa. We're continuing to refine that based on what we're hearing from our families. Last week, I talked about a survey being launched for our families. That has actually happened. Chrystal, if you can post that in the chat. But we're continually doing what we say we're going to do. We have about 25% of our families who have responded to that survey now. And we're still looking at 25 to 30%, if not higher now, of families who are still saying that they want a face-to-face option. And so, so with that, we're taking our lead from what our families need us to support them in terms of their kids continuing to learn. We've continued to work to train our teachers, and this is not just something that we're preparing for the fall. Jametta, we have started that process back with the distance learning in March and April, and making sure and building the competency of our whole district around the Teams platform, which is the platform that we're using, and we're scaffolding in several others. So that process is ongoing. We have 3 PDs throughout the summer, but again, there's been ongoing PD to make sure that we are building proficiency and support for our teachers to teach online. We know there will be options for teachers to both teach online as well as in person in the classroom. And just will end with some of the safety measures that we're putting in place. Again, all of our staff, as they return to school, have to produce a negative COVID test. That test is then submitted to HR for verification. We also have to do a daily symptom checker just to make sure that you haven't been in contact with somebody who's tested positive, that you're filling up to par, that the temperature is right. And then when you get that, you're clear to actually come to work. And once you enter a Detroit Public School Community District building, you will then first have your temperature checked with a temperature checker to make sure that that is normal, and then you're permitted to enter the building. For our students, one of the questions that's come up is, how are we going to have students sitting in place all day? As I shared last week, we will continue to build in additional breaks. We know that that might be a challenge and interrupt an instruction somewhat. However, we know that it is working in our summer school space now, where teachers are providing additional breaks for small groups of children who are dismissed to stretch and, jump or whatever they need to do to come back to the learning environment. So those are some of the ongoing moving parts of the reopening plan, some of the issues that we're facing and powering through as this work evolves day to day, Jametta. So I'll stop there because I do want to allow time for questions.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sharlonda. And I'm sure that our audience has questions because you just received an abundance of information. And some of that information is going to be available in our chat as well as after the program. So again, we're continuing to empower you with more knowledge. And to continue our discussion with schools, we are happy to have back Ralph Bland, the CEO of New Paradigm in Education. Welcome, Ralph.
Good afternoon, Jametta. How are you?
Wonderful.
And I want to thank you all for having me back on. It's always a pleasure. I'm in transit right now, so if you don't see me, trying to get to my location. And I do want to say hello to Ms. Buckman also, who's on the line.
Hey, what's up, Ralph?
How are you? Good to see you as always.
The same here.
And so I know we're talking about reopening and school plans. And one thing I definitely want to mention to parents is that schools are going to have a lot of similar plans altogether. If they're the district, charters, Catholic, and it's basically 3 to 4 scenarios. Those scenarios will either be face-to-face, hybrid, which Ms. Buckman did mention, on a rotating schedule or AB schedule, or all virtual learning when a child must stay at home on a phase from 1 to 3, according to the governor's roadmap plan. One of the biggest challenges that is really hanging out there, and we feel, is the challenge of making parents feel comfortable. And that is going to be definitely difficult because we're in a pandemic. And so it's important that, Ms. Buckman mentioned this earlier, that we do hear from our parents, the district parents, the charter school parents, the private school parents, to really feel what they're comfortable with when we're talking about students being allowed either to come back to school, or parents having the means where they can keep their child at home and do online learning. We feel that's going to be very important, and that we definitely have to be on the same page with all our parents. In addition to that, teachers are going to have to be tested. That's definitely something that the charter school landscape is also doing, and making sure that they get those daily temperature checks, et cetera. And also being prepared if somebody does test positive. If it's a teacher or a student, what's going to be plan B for that school to go into action. So it is some talk about being able to rapidly test students, if it has to go to that, but also staff members. In addition to that, we also have to think about the employment of parents. How is that going to affect our parents, and how is that going to affect their employment situations, where we have to be able to support them also if they need childcare, and if they don't have those resources to be able to have that connectivity in order to in order to supply them with hotspots or et cetera. It is a lot of movement in the greater Detroit community to work out internet connectivity for families that do not have it, and setting up hotspot stations in certain locations, maybe at churches, larger connectivity. Some talk about making buses a factor in this also. So it is some work being done behind the scenes to hopefully make that happen if students have to go to a full out remote stay at home virtual learning. I would just like to add that
Okay.
we just want to be in support of all schools at this time. And I think that is critical because we're talking about an entire community that is in a pandemic. And we just need to keep that at the forefront of our minds, that we need to really be supporting each other.
Thank you. And that's certainly our philosophy because we are all in this together, and it's together that we'll be able to get through this, as well as staying focused on those who are the most vulnerable amongst us. And we already know that is the Detroit Public School Community District and charters in the city of Detroit. We are serving a significantly vulnerable population. I'm sure that we have a variety of questions. Again, you can text us at 313-288-2082. You can also put your questions in the Facebook chat. Christine, questions, please.
We do have questions, quite a few, and we want to remind people to continue to post those questions. There's also a survey that's being posted in the chat right now, and if you fill out that survey, you'll be entered into a raffle for a $25 gift card because we really want to hear from you. The first two questions are for Brad. So Brad, if you could come back on screen, that would be great. So this is a very direct one. When is the budget estimating conference? And there's a follow-up to that.
I do not know. It has not been scheduled at this point, but I believe it will be in the second or third week of August.
Okay. And then schools that go to an online model, will the funding structure be the same per student, or will a different structure have to be decided and approved? And I think some of this question is coming from the public's understanding that you don't get the same amount of money per pupil if you're doing online instruction. And right now our schools really need all and more money per pupil to make sure that they're able to teach and keep everybody safe and
sure,
and so on. So go ahead.
There's been no indication, no conversations that I have heard of differentiating funding, whether a student is in person, is virtual, distance, whatever you want to call it. The goal is to fund each student equitably as much as possible. So regardless of how instruction is being delivered to them.
Great. Okay. Is there a way, Brad, for you to find out for us to get confirmation of whether that is true or not true? Because I think that's a worry that some folks have.
Yeah, it's ultimately a decision that needs to be made by the legislators that are working on those budgets. So there's nothing I can say confidently at this point to say yes, 100% that is going to be the case. That will be a part of the budget conversations. But I can tell you that I've never heard the idea of differentiating based upon how a student's receiving instruction.
Great. Okay.
So,
thank you, Brad.
And so, Christine, I'm sorry, I'm going to need to step off.
That's okay. If we get any more questions for you, we'll make sure that we get them to you. Thank you so much.
Please do. Thank you for having me
with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. And then Sharlonda, if you could come back up, we've got, and Ralph. So this first question is related to Governor Whitmer's new ban on indoor gatherings of more than 10 people. And how are schools going to adapt to that? Or is it necessary for schools to adapt to that new guideline?
Christine, I think we're going to have to get some additional clarity on that. Is that the context? Is that in the context of specifically schools, or are we talking about in the context of community? So I think we will seek additional guidance on that. And we've had to make pivots and adjustments this whole way. So depending on what the state ultimately determines, we will make adjustments accordingly.
Great, thank you, Sharlonda. Ralph, is there anything you'd like to add, or does that
I
cover it?
definitely agree with Ms. Buckman, and because I'm sure that the guidance on the roadmap is very different than the guidance that she's giving to the general public as it pertains to gatherings. And so I do agree. Like I said, I agree with Ms. Buckman about the clarity on that. And I know different things have been coming down from the governor's office since it's been more over the summer that has not pertained to schools in general, which I'm sure it'll start being more specific.
Great, thank you. Shalonda, this is for DPSCD. Will families have the choice of picking online learning only? I do not feel comfortable sending my children back for in-person. I was told we would have to go with a hybrid schedule.
Yeah, they will have they actually have the choice right now. So for parents who are listening, who are Detroit Public Schools Community District parents, you can go through your child's email. That survey link went out, and you can respond right now that you only want an online option for your family. You are not forced into any particular option or a hybrid option.
Great, thank you. And then Ralph, are you doing a similar setup?
Yes, parents definitely will have an option to do just online if they feel comfortable enough where they would like to keep their child home. Definitely.
Great. I think either one of you can answer this, or both of you. How will you support families who decide to do virtual learning, those who might not have the technology? And as we know, DPSCD is getting every child a tablet, and that is currently happening. But maybe the first question, and if there's anything that you want to add to that. So how will you support families who decide to do virtual learning, and especially those that might not have access to the technology?
So yeah, you actually answered part of the question, Christine. We are proud of that. That's just another thing that we have said that we would do as a district, and would support from corporate and foundation leaders. We are able to provide every one of our students with a free tablet that also includes internet access, because having a tablet and you're in a blackout area doesn't help you very much at all. And so we are providing those things for our students. I think in addition to that, we have had a continuum of support for parents, because we understand if you're choosing an online option, we also have to make sure our parents are digitally savvy and understand how to use the Teams platform and communicate with your child's teacher. So there's some ongoing training that is also happening with our families through Parent Academy to really close that digital divide. So those are some of the core supports.
Great.
Just adding to that, earlier in the early height of the pandemic in March, when we were giving out laptops to parents, and we did find out that a certain number of parents, and also through surveys, didn't have that connectivity. So we were able to supply them with hotspots, so they were able to have that connectivity. And even moving forward, it would be more schools in the charter landscapes being able to go one-to-one and getting support from the business community and getting those laptops to those students also, and making sure that parents would have the connectivity through hotspots or other means, but every student will be able to have connectivity.
Great, thank you. How often will teachers be tested?
So for Detroit Public Schools Community District, you have to have a negative COVID test in order to come back to school. That unless you have a circumstance where you come in contact and you can't, you have to self-quarantine, you would have to produce another negative test before you're able to come back into the school. And so that's our current cadence around testing. And Christine, as you mentioned that, I did want to lift up, the unfair, well, that's my thought. We think it's unfair that Detroit Public Schools Community District students were forced to be tested, those whose parents chose for them to go to summer school. And as you know, there were a few of our students tested positive. So I do want to follow up with the community on that. We work with the health department to follow up in those instances to support the families. And since that time, we have had no additional positive results from those families or the staff who were working with those students in school. So I just want to take that head on, but mostly push back on this whole notion, if we're going to test students, let's test all students, not just Detroit students, not just Detroit Public Schools Community District students, but every student, if that is going to be the landscape. But I do think parents have something that they are going to want to say about that and are saying it now.
So Ralph, before you answer, I think that's a good follow-up, Sharlonda, or how you set that up. So could you speak, one of the questions here is about the specific safety measures being implemented. And so I think what you just said about the 2 students that tested positive and the folks that did not come into contact with them did not, no one has tested positive besides those 2 students. Could you talk about the specific safety measures that were in place that seem to have worked?
Yeah, I think there were 3 students, Christine, and I think, again, this was at the directive of a judge who decided that Detroit students only should have to test. And so many parents gave their permission. Some parents actually refused to have their children tested. And so in that case, we work with the health department. And so, that was our process because they've been our partner from day one. But Christine, can you further clarify when you talk about the process? Because that was not originally part of our process.
Yeah, so the safety measure, yeah. So I think, let me ask it better. So clearly the safety measures worked if no one else tested positive, right?
Yeah.
So what was in place? What was in place? Were teachers wearing masks, students, hand washing stations? Yeah.
Yes, I love it when you answer my questions for me, Christine. It makes my job so much easier.
Can you tell that I've created a plan? Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. It is, as we said, we've taken our guidance from the CDC as well, and they are still saying to us the same thing, the social distancing. So students are socially distant, students are wearing masks. There is a frequency around washing. And, again, those practices have scientifically proven to minimize the spread of COVID. And so we are religiously practicing those things. We've also put accountability measures in place and oversight just to make sure there's consistency around that. So we feel good about where we are and the measures that we have in place.
Great. And then Ralph, I know that Jametta just popped on, which means that we're out of time. There's a few more questions that we'd like all of you to answer. I just want to say what Chrystal put in the chat, and I want to give Ralph an opportunity to answer if there's going to be a different cadence for the teachers in his schools. But so Chrystal Wilson from the district just wrote in our chat, a daily symptom tracker survey is required for completion prior to entering school for all staff and students. All staff are to report back with a negative test. Precautions that were taken for summer school, staff required negative tests for COVID-19, employee and student training, class size reduction limited to 15 to 20 students, required masks, daily thorough cleanings, disinfecting of all buildings, classrooms, and buses, in addition to what Sharlonda just presented to us. And Ralph, what is the cadence for teachers being tested at your schools?
So definitely all teachers will get a COVID test. and we'll keep up with that information, and it'll be turned into our human resource department. In addition, we've also trained some people in contact tracing, which we thought would be very crucial, which just in case somebody comes up positive with a COVID test. Also, we would take daily temperature checks and keep a tracker of that also. But and we also had incorporated 2 doctors that are specialists in infectious disease on our own task force, also to help us with guidance in that right direction where we need to go.
Thank you both so much, and I'm gonna let Jametta take it over from here. But thank you both, and folks out there, please keep putting your questions in the chat. Jametta, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
certainly.
Thank you.
And it is difficult to stop, but we are hoping to move forward to another really critical section, which is our discussion about voter education. And one of the organizations that's really been helping to move us forward, particularly in a communal and collective model, is Citizen Detroit. And we are so blessed to have Sheila Cockrell, who many of us know has been a long-time warrior in the field trenches and the spaces, to talk about that. Not only does everyone need to vote, but we need to vote and understand and strategize around that 365. So with that, Sheila, welcome.
Honored to be here. Am I showing up?
We see your super S, like, you know, Superwoman
Yeah.
S, but and super CEO, we see that. But
yes. Well, it says the host has always asked you to start your video. Okay, there we
there
go.
You are. Ta-da.
Yes.
Okay.
In this era of COVID and civic engagement through Zoom is something of an oxymoron, but it is a pleasure to be here. And Jametta, your history and your tradition is just as long as mine in the city. So it is an honor and a pleasure to join you and the entire team. Sharlonda Buckman, I've known for many, many years. Ralph Bland. This is really an important group of people talking about important issues. I think, you know, today at this very moment in Atlanta, the icon John Lewis is being laid to rest. His homegoing service is going on now. And if there's one thing that I know is an absolute fact, is that John Lewis would want each and every one of us to vote like our lives depend on it, and like democracy depends on it, because at this juncture in this country, both things are true. And that as important as voting is to vote in an informed manner. It is important to know the candidates. It's important to know the issues. And we have a number of really important elections on this primary ballot next Tuesday. We have the county prosecutor, the county sheriff ballot are on the ballot. Members of the for the county commission. It's really important. We should know, and I know folks from Michigan Voice are going to be on in a minute, and they're going to talk about some of the specific information in terms of what you can do now. But the point, I think the most important point I want to make is that voting is essential. Your voice counts, even if you think you don't have real choices between individuals. It's always important to vote, because even if it's Tweedledee and Tweedledum, you need to pick one, because they're going to act and be on behalf of the people who elect them. And if your voice is not heard, if you can be dismissed as not caring or thinking it doesn't matter, or it's not really the way to make change, all of those are arguments that you can hear. The reality is you're not going to be part of the conversation, and your interests are not going to be fully represented. So there's a long tradition and history in the city of people who have led many, many efforts to encourage voter participation, voter engagement, and I'm pleased to be certainly a part of that effort. But there's nothing more important on Tuesday than finding the time to vote. We can vote by mail. You can vote right now. The ability to vote, in spite of efforts on the part of some nationally, particularly to try to reduce people's interest or ability to participate, the fact of the matter is we can. And in this era, you know, sort of figuring out how you do civic engagement and civic education when people can't be together is a real challenge. And we cannot let that challenge diminish our commitment or diminish our participation in the process, because it does matter. And we do create community. We do create linkage and connection when we participate, even in this sort of strange world of Zoom meetings and Google Hangouts and, you know, so this sort of disembodied kind of engagement. It is what we must do because we have to be safe and we need to look out and take care for each other. And part of how we do that, and I'll just put in my 4 cents on this, which is we've got to wear masks when we are in the presence of others, particularly in indoor settings. So if you're going to go to the polls, please take your mask. So again, I just want to reiterate, it's a pleasure to be here. Citizen Detroit has been involved in this work for a very long time. And we really we have our website, informdetroit.org, where you can have we can watch videos of some of the candidates who are standing for election in this season. So again, be safe, everybody, take good care, and vote by mail between now and Tuesday. And if you're going to the polls, vote on Tuesday like your life depends on it, because it does.
Yes, absolutely. This election cycle, all the way to the national, is one of the most unprecedented times for us.
Yes.
And so speaking about unprecedented times and how do we organize differently based upon the dilemma of being in this pandemic, we're pleased to have 2 of the representatives, the co-chairs of the Michigan Voice, Summer Foster and Tamika Ramsey, to come and speak to us about the methods and opportunities we have to exercise this critical opportunity. Summer and Tamika, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Welcome.
So my name is Summer Foster. I am the co-executive director of Michigan Voices. We do work around civic engagement and voting rights.
Hi, I'm Tamika Ramsey. I am the other co-director of Michigan Voices, working very closely with Summer.
So one of the things that we want to get across is that the election is this Tuesday. It is our primary election. You have to vote. You have to stick in one party when you vote on Tuesday. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Thanks to Proposal 3 that passed in 2018, Promote the Vote, folks can register to vote up until 8 p.m. on Election Day. All you need to do is go to your clerk's office and register to vote there. If you have any questions about where your polling location are, or you want to see a sample ballot, you can go to michigan.gov/vote. We have no excuse absentee voting in the state, but we're asking now that if you have a ballot, that you take it to the clerk's office or one of the drop boxes to mail it in, or to drop it off, because the mail won't get there in time for this Tuesday. And you have up until Saturday at 2 p.m. to request your absentee ballot.
I just wanted to reiterate once again that the window for mailing in your ballot has closed, and everyone either needs to take it to the clerk's office. You can just hand it over. You can also, the day of the election, if you have your ballot completed, take it to your polling location and they will enter it. Do not mail, because with COVID, the mailing time is longer. It is not a postmark date. It has to be in the hands of the clerk by 8 p.m. on Tuesday.
Are there any other critical items that you'd like to remind us of, both for this coming election, not only in August, but as we think about the election in November?
Yes, absolutely. So Michigan law requires the clerk or the poll worker to ask you for your ID, but if you do not have your ID, you can still get a ballot. You can ask for an affidavit to vote, or an affidavit of identity, and make sure that you are able to vote that day. Additionally, if you are in jail awaiting trial, you are still eligible to vote in the state of Michigan. The only time that you cannot vote is if you are in prison or in jail convicted of a crime, but felons are allowed to vote in the state of Michigan. Tamika, anything else?
I was just going to say, I know that a lot of people within the state of Michigan get confused because they hear a lot of out-of-state concerns about people who voted, who had a felony and then had to go back and finish out their jail or prison time. And that does not apply here. Returning citizens, once they are home, and as Summer said, before they get convicted, they can vote. So we just need to make sure that everyone is voting. It's also important to flip it over, so to know who you're voting for. The backside does a lot with local elections and millages, which are very important and vital to the survival of our communities as well.
And yes, thank you. Excuse me, just one moment. I think we have some questions. Christine, do we have any questions from the audience?
Not at this time. And so if the one thing that I think is resonating with me is, and I'd like all of you could speak to this, is what Sheila Cockrell said, that vote like our lives depend on it. And could you just so two things. One, where do people find information about what is going to be on the ballot and the millages and also the folks? And we know that DPSCD has a millage that's coming up, very important. And you can go to their website to learn more about that millage. But where do voters find what other millages are going to be on the ballot and who's running? And then I think it's important that our lives do depend on it. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about that? Because we really don't have a democracy if we don't vote. So, so if you just want to each speak just very briefly to where do you find good information and why is voting such an important right?
I would just say a couple of things. One of the places to go, the Detroit Free Press is doing a really good job on their website. They have bios of various candidates. The Citizen Detroit InformedDetroit.org website has videos that each of the candidates who've responded to our request that we've posted. You can hear people in their own voice. I would want to say about the DPSCD millage, it is a renewal. It is a non-homestead renewal of an existing millage, so it's not new taxes, 1, and 2, this does not relate to anybody's home. It relates to other what are called non-homestead properties. So it's commercial or rental or properties like that. It's a very important vote issue to take a look at and decide whether you're going to support it or not. I think when Summer, maybe it was Summer, talked about the other side of the ballot, that's really important. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard people say, I didn't realize there were 2 sides to the ballot. Turn it over when you first see it, because the other side is where you're going to potentially have the most questions and need to go to sources. But the Free Press is one, DPSCD on the millage is going to be another, Citizen Detroit. I think if you Google some of this, there's ways to get the information.
The right to vote is important because all of our other rights are derived and protected by the fact of people voting. And so if you want to have clean water, clean air, you want to have quality education, you need to get out there and vote because all of our lives do depend on it. One of the places that I always look to find information on who's going to be on the ballot is the League of Women Voters. They have great questionnaires and great information on the ballot proposals on their website. Also, you can check out michigan.gov/vote to see a sample of your ballot so you know exactly what the ballot looks like before you get to the clerk's office.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to raise that, we have so many concerns. We have so many quality of life issues around this global pandemic. And once again, who we vote for, who represents us, helps to determine what our quality of life is. And so we need to make sure that we elect people who understand that everybody doesn't have unlimited resources and can sit at home and homeschool their kids, that people have to go to work, that people have to pay bills, that our DTE and consumers are not like saying, okay, we're in a pandemic, you don't have to pay. Like, people still have to live. And if we have elected officials who understand that and are fighting for the rights of the people to have a safe quality of life while this pandemic is raging, because it doesn't seem to be slowing down, it helps us in the long run. But if we complain about not having resources for this pandemic and we don't vote for the people who will look out for our best interests, it's shame on us.
Yes, absolutely.
And then Sheila, Tamika, or Summer, just one, because we've got to go to the next person. Judges, people seem very interested in judges. I think this time has reminded us how important judges are. But is there a good place to find information on the judges that are currently running?
Sometimes the Detroit Bar Association has on their website information on the judges. We find that out too, that, I mean, how do you know a judge? Unless you're in the criminal justice system, you really don't know anybody except you know these names. So the Detroit Bar Association is a really good source.
And just real quickly, you can also go to like the UAW SEIU. So I look at unions to see, because they will give you a breakdown and they will talk about their cases.
Great, thank you all. And if we could drop into the chat the DPS website so that folks can get information on the renewal. And then if we could also drop in the chat the Detroit Bar Association or the Michigan Bar Association, so that we have some places where folks can look for information about judges. Thank you. Jametta?
Yes, thank you. And I can't help but suggest, or actually do a challenge to all of us that may be blessed to be at the helm of our organization, is if we can't give the full day off for people to vote, at least do a half day. It should be a national holiday and no barrier to people being able to vote. So I want to encourage more employers to give at least a half day off for people to vote. It is a basic right and need for our Republican democracy. So we're switching now to the very end of our program, but it's really not the end because we're going to hear a parent voice. And if you've noticed, we always have a parent voice at the beginning and also at the end, because ultimately everything that we are doing is designed to help to empower parents as champions for their children and champions for change. And with that, we are happy to have with us Jabril Muhammad of Hope Starts Here as that parent voice. Welcome, Jabril.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Jamila, and all in the panel. My name is Jabril Muhammad, J. Muhammad, and I'm just a representative of Hope Starts Here. We are a community initiative whose mission is to grant families with resources throughout the various districts of Detroit. And one of those resources is a simple 6 a day initiative. We encourage all families, teachers, caretakers, anyone who may be in the presence of a child or youth to take on our 6 a day, which includes talk to me, read to me, encourage me, hug me, play with me, sing with me. And we understand during this pandemic that is especially important for those youths to get that, especially from, again, parents and caretakers that they're in a home with. And this is just an example of one of the many ways Hope Starts Here hopes to change and bring in a wave of change to the community. The next thing I would like to bring up just before my time is up is the importance of voting. We've had a number of great panelists on here talk about voting, and whether you are for the current administration or against it, voting can make a real change. And I want to especially encourage my generation, the millennials, and the Generation Zs, Generation X's, to go out and vote, because we are the smallest group to go out and vote, but our voices can make a change in ours. This is important, and as Ms. Sheila said, you can vote now, you can vote by home. You don't always have to necessarily go out to the polling places. And for parents, for parents who have children, remember to try to keep the social distancing. So keep your child at home when you can, and while you go out and vote and practice safe social distancing. And I thank you again for the time today. Thank you, Ms. Demita. Thank you, panel. And yeah, our hope starts here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jabril. So Christine, you're gonna let's wrap it up for our program.
Thank you, Jametta. As we reach our closing, it's time to wrap up the town hall. We want to thank all of our panelists and each one of you for joining us today. If your question wasn't answered, we will get the answer to your questions and post them next week on onedetroitpbs.org and on DPTV Facebook page. And not only will we put the questions that were not answered, also the questions that we did answer. We had a lot of information that was coming to you verbally, so we'll get that to you guys in writing. To sign up for regular updates, please fill out the form that's being put in the chat right now, or you can put your email or phone number in the chat, or you can text it to us at 313-288-2082. Again, that number is 313-288-2082. We also want to know what that we'll be doing shorter programs. So going forward, our programs will be about an hour long. And this is to better accommodate families and to make sure that you get the best information in a shorter period of time. Like always, we have a few asks before you go. We just listened to some awesome panelists talk to us about why voting is so important. And so we'd like everybody to please visit ballotready.org to read about the candidates on your ballot and the proposals on your ballot. So that's ballotready.org. Please also make a plan to vote in person or drop off your absentee ballot. And I'd like to reiterate Jametta's ask in full support that as we lead organizations, we allow our staff and our employees to have the time that they need to go and vote. So minimally giving a half day for our employees to go vote and quite frankly for us to go vote. There are 2 boxes in Detroit where you can drop off your ballot. So make sure you make a plan for getting to one of those. One of the boxes is outside of the Department of Elections on West Grand Boulevard. The other is at 2 Woodward. So 2 ballot boxes, one outside of the Department of Elections on West Grand Boulevard, and the other is located at 2 Woodward. You can register in person up until August the 4th, which is the day of the primary election, and you can do this at your local clerk's office. And you have up until the July 31st to register online for an absentee ballot. And so that is July 31st, which is tomorrow. There's a link in the chat to the online absentee request for an absentee ballot. So please go to the chat if you still need an absentee ballot. Second, please fill out the 2 parent surveys that are being put in the chat right now. The first one is from 482 Forward. It takes about 2 minutes to complete, and it's the 482 Forward's community survey about reopening schools. We really want to know what you need and what you want. So please fill out that survey. The second survey is from Hope Starts Here and DPN, and they are spearheading this survey for a citywide group that is looking at reopening. That link is in the chat right now. It is a bit longer because it is collecting more detailed information, not private information, just we're trying to get a really good understanding of what the parent that is filling out the survey, their child's ages, and and all of the different things that they might need, both related to reopening schools and early child care, but also out of school time child care as well. So both of these surveys are incredibly important. Please take the time to fill them out. We really do want to hear from you, and that information will be used to influence decisions about how we reopen and what we need to put in place. So again, we really need to hear from you. Before we go, before you go and we go, we want to hear more about what you would like to learn about during our town halls. So if you have topics or experts that you think we should have on, and information that we should share, please put it in the chat now or text us at 313-288-2082. Again, 313-288-2082. We're posting a survey in the chat one last time. Please fill it out. And if you do, you'll be entered to win a $25 gift card. And as always, I'd love for everyone that's involved in the town hall to please turn on their cameras, because we are truly a collaborative, and it really takes all of us to be able to make this happen smoothly. So I think everyone's up. And we want to remind everybody to stay healthy, stay powerful, and stay strong in this time. Cindy, Cindy, will you please translate that into Spanish for me?
Okay, I like the sound of that. Manténganse saludables, manténganse poderosos y manténganse fuertes.
And thank you. And Saeed, will you please say it in Arabic?
حافظ على صحتك، ابقى ثابتا ومتينا وابقى قويا. إلى اللقاء. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day and weekend.
You too.